Should I have clicked on Made for Kids for the stream?
No.
This isn't
Made for
a kids friendly stream.
what? No, this is not a kids friendly stream.
Yeah, I know, especially since you're on it. Hey everybody, stream started.
What? What about me
Stream
is
has
not
begun. No, the stream's begun. Shh. All right, we're moving on.
okay?
Let's see here. All right, let me see if I can get some. I don't know. I can't figure out the whole like, should I have music or not? Because I like music, but then some people don't like music.
You
And
should
it's,
have very quiet music in the
I
background.
got that's what I want to do. Usually when I have music, maybe it's just a very small minority of people that actually like get upset about the music.
I
Um,
think probably.
okay, so let me do some music, but I'll make it as uh see if I can find something. See something chill that we can
Should you have
enjoy.
done this before you started the stream?
I can do this whenever I want. It's my stream. Shut up.
Okay, sorry.
Exactly. You be quiet, person. Yeah, I said it.
You did. You got me good.
I did. I got you real good. That's not what I'm looking for. That's stupid.
You're stupid.
You're stupid. All right.
You're the stupidest.
Man, this stream is coming. A great start for all of us. All right. Okay. Okay, so now that we've established that you're the stupidest.
Yeah, I am. You're right. I'm really dumb. I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm talking about. Nobody should listen to
Well,
me
this is
ever.
why it's the small brain stream.
Exactly.
Because you're on it.
Yeah. Any stream I'm on is a small brain stream.
Yeah, correct. Um, Let me get this YouTube link started. What is this? Oh yeah, by the way, anytime you VOD one of my streams, just go ahead and skip the first like 2 minutes. That's gonna be nothing but me talking to myself and being a boomer.
Boomer.
Exactly.
Are you even technically a boomer?
No, not really. Like
No,
in
you're not.
actuality, no. It's
No,
just
you're not a
no.
boomer. What
But
are you?
in
What's
terms of,
after boomer?
I'm I don't know. I'm a millennial. Like the
You're not a
last batch.
millennial.
I'm the last
You're not a
batch.
millennial.
Yeah,
I'm the
technically.
last. I'm the last batch of the millennials. What the fuck, dude? You're not a millennial.
I thought it was. Well, then I'm no, because I'm not. What the fuck am I then? Born in
Uh,
1984. I'm like in some weird
between
border.
category.
Yeah, I'm in
Well,
some.
actually, to be fair, I'm in a between. I'm between millennials and the next one because I'm 1997.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're at the
I'm really
end.
close to 2000.
I don't know where I'm. I think no, I know. I'm at the beginning of millennial. I'm actually at the
Mm,
beginning, like at the very beginning of it. So technically, like somewhere between millennial and what? It would be Generation X.
I don't know, something like that.
I don't know. I don't give a fuck. Well, that's just stupid anyway.
Where we put down these labels is so arbitrary anyway.
I that's you got me on that one.
Got
So
him.
got him. You did it. All right, I'm gonna be posting this on my news on the server. Then I'm gonna fucking. Let's see here. And don't worry, I'm not gonna. I know people get annoyed by that, everyone. So I'm not gonna do those anymore. Let's see how that works. Let's see if it even has an impact on me not. If I don't do that. So.
Wait, you mean impact on how much hate you get, or an impact
No,
on
I
how
mean
many
like no,
people?
no. How much like how many people actually show up?
Oh,
1997. Ooh, Iron's 1997 also. You
did we
hear
get
that?
a did we get a chat? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Iron. Iron just said Sakuin or whatever. Iron. How you doing, Iron? You doing good? All right, that's good. It's fucking hot in here, dude. Like, I have my AC on. It's fucking stuffy as shit in here. I don't
Are you
understand
sure
why.
you're not just fat?
It could just be that I'm fat. Thank you. It could just be that I'm like overweight. That's true.
Yeah.
Could
You
be
should
that.
donate some of your fat to me because I'm underweight.
Yeah, put it on. Put. I'm gonna put it like right in your fupa.
I don't. Why
Inject,
there?
inject it straight into Burb's fupa.
I don't have a fupa. There's
And
no
that way you
pocket
will
to
after
inject.
that.
Why would you put it there of all places?
You look like you have a horrific tumor on your waist.
That'll just look like I'm pregnant.
Yeah, well, that's something.
What do you mean that's something? That's horrible.
Iron's gonna go to sleep in about 5 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Iron. Our only viewer is gonna go to sleep in about 5 minutes.
Oh no.
And that, we're gonna be down to 0 after that.
It's all right.
Yeah.
It's better. The less people hearing me speak, the better.
Nah, I disagree. All shit here.
No.
All shit here. All right, so where is that? I'm hungover as fuck, by the way. So this is probably like the worst idea to try to do a stream. Oh man, damn it, Nanoma.
What did Nanomo do? Did they add everybody?
Yeah, I added everyone on the server because I hadn't told them that I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, it's not going to be mad at you, so.
Oh, that's funny. I was trying to avoid at everyone, Nanomo being the good Samaritan. Oh no. That's
look at that happy little Froggo. He's so happy.
So happy.
I do a good thing.
Yeah.
I do such a good thing. Wow.
I know, and I'm being a dick over here saying not good thing.
Happy little frog.
Okay, you know what? This time it was a good thing.
Yeah, a good thing.
It a good thing. Alright. So, let's see here. Okay, I got 2 people. I want to get at least like 3 or 4 people before we get started. So that way we could at least have somewhat of a fucking little tiny baby audience with us.
Audiences are overrated. Get out of here. Get out. We don't want you. Get the fuck out.
Shut up, bird. We want all of you. We want every inch of you.
No, that's gross. That's too intimate.
That wasn't intimate. You made it that.
No, you made it that with every.
No, that's not true. Yeah, but just because it involves something like that doesn't mean it make it intimate. I've had there's plenty of instances in which somebody could receive all the inches of someone and never feel intimate.
But I think we have different definitions of the word intimate. If somebody's receiving all the inches, it's intimate.
No, it's not. It's not intimate, especially if they're dead inside.
Oh my god. Okay, that's not okay. Then what is it if it's not intimate?
It's just flesh tearing and flesh bumping and grinding.
Maybe my schizoid brain just thinks that that's what intimacy is.
It's just flesh.
That's probably the problem.
It's the flesh.
When you say intimacy, all I think about is meat.
Hold on, yeah. Well, that's all you would think about. Let me fucking move this thing. I got a new shirt. It's pretty dope.
You got a new shirt. You're bragging about your new shirt.
Yeah, my super cool shirt.
Okay. Well, nobody can see it because we can only see your face.
Well, I stood up for a second, and they could.
Well, I wasn't looking at it, so I couldn't see it.
Hey, Burb, shut the fuck up. We gotta do this, alright?
Well, yeah, we could, but there's nobody here yet, so we're waiting.
Oh, been to another party, slept there most of the time. Hell yeah. We should all be just sleeping at parties. The Schizoid party mantra. Sleep at parties. Like, no matter how... Loud. Parties are loud and very annoying. And very aggressive on one's sensory stuff. Alright. I don't think I'll go to another party again. I'm so articulate. So articulate. My tongue knows articulation. It has many points of articulation.
Your tongue is very dexterous and maneuverable.
Yes, very much so.
Agile.
I have many dexterity stat points in my tongue.
Yeah.
Don't say it like that, Bird. You're making everyone uncomfortable. Okay. All right, we got 3 viewers. Fuck it, let's get started.
Okay.
We'll have people show up after, and then on top of that, most of the time, most of the views are just like VODs anyway, so it doesn't fucking matter.
Okay.
Maybe this time I'll upload a actual. Probably not. I gotta do actual thumbnails for our combos.
True.
That'd probably be a good conversation. That'd be a good thing. I'll probably just make you look like. I'll just have that virgin Chad picture up every time. Yeah,
Virgin Chad.
yeah, because you look like the virgin in the
I
virgin
I
memes.
I do.
Yeah, it's all skinny with the hunched over with the glasses and the earbuds on.
I don't hunch anymore.
Oh, okay.
I have good posture
Oh,
now.
okay. Well, that's good. Okay, guys. So now that we wasted what? How long has it been? A good 10 minutes. Uh, we're gonna be talking about some ideas, and one of those ideas. Okay, so by the way, to introduce this type of stream, whenever it's an A and B stream, whenever you see the A and B stream, it's usually gonna be me and Burb, and we're gonna be talking about a bunch of fucking big brain bullshit and
No,
theories.
small brain.
Small brain, yeah, small brain shit. Talking about theories and concepts and ideas and how they intermingle, and we're gonna be getting all kinds of schizoid fucking thought patterns going, and um, just
This
kind of
it's schizoid abstraction city,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, but pertaining to a very specific or attempting to keep it on a very specific subject matter. Um, can't promise you that's what's gonna happen, but we're gonna try. So today, what we're gonna talk about is well, it's right here. I have a kin selection up, but specifically in-group, out-group dynamics in relation to kin selection and how those might apply differently or how they're expressed differently by people with uh I guess cluster A style thinking and brain powers or whatever.
Brain powers.
Yeah, brain
Articulate.
powers. Yeah. So how it applies to us, how it's the same, how it's different, how those in-group out-groups are affected, how it's abstracted, how we form relationships with them, blah blah blah. And we're just gonna fuck around and see where it takes us. Sound good? Everybody in the chat sound all right? All four of you? All four of you in the chat sound cool?
I mean, we're still gonna do it, even if they say it's
No,
not
I know
cool,
we're still gonna do it.
because we have nothing else set up.
Yeah, the Iron said in-group me, out-group everyone else. See, that's not true, Iron, because I'm always in your in-group. Oh, Iron, you saying I'm not in your in-group, bro? It's fucked up. It's fucked up. All right. So let me start by reading this. Okay. So these are just some basic layouts. Bird found me something I could just read so that we get kind of a definition of what we're working with, and then just kind of go from there. All right. Why did both of these say? Oh, this is like two different editions. Oh, I see. So the most updated edition is this 2013 one. Oh, okay. I was wondering why they kind of said the same shit and started the same way, but I guess they're just several ones. Whatever. The true power of kin selection theory is its generality. Kin selection can explain a range of social interactions, not just altruistic cooperation. The simplest cases are when interacting individuals are more closely related, they should be more likely to cooperate, show more selfish restraint, and show less aggression. A range of more subtle possibilities arise whenever there is a potential for cooperation or conflict between relatives. A few examples of these are mentioned below. In species where cannibalism occurs in response to food limitation, individuals should prefer to eat non-relatives, as occurs in tiger salamanders and ladybirds. In social insects such as wasps and bees, workers remove eggs laid by other workers because they are more related to the queen's eggs than to the worker-laid eggs. In many insects related, males, brothers, compete with each other for mates, often their sisters, before these females disperse to lay eggs elsewhere. When this happens, mothers produce a female-biased offspring sex ratio to reduce this competition between brothers. If the relatedness between parasites infecting a host is high, they are expected to prudently exploit that host, causing less damage and mortality, virulence. In other words, kin selection theory predicts when individuals should behave altruistically and also when they should curtail their selfishness. All right, so Burb, explain how this kin selection stuff and how it applies to human beings from your understanding, since you love reading about this kind of shit, and how it applies to social behavior in humans with the whole in-group out-group thing.
Okay, so kin selection isn't just about survival, right? It's not just helping um, my things, people that are related to me, individuals which are related to me, helping them survive. It's more about helping them pass on their genes, right? So my brother or my sister has 50% of my genes. So if I sacrifice my life for two brothers, right, then that's a net. That's good.
Yeah.
That's or
Yeah.
more, even more is better. Um, so well, when the modes of success become more complicated, those dynamics sort of abstract out. So
That's what I
when
like.
when you're navigating a complicated social hierarchy, with lots of new domains of potential success or failure, and because of the status uh, representations, the status interactions with sexual selection, um, it becomes advantageous for humans to essentially be wingmen for for people that are genetically close to them. So it's like I'm going to exaggerate how competent you are and how high status you are
Mm-hmm.
in reference to this person who you're interested in, so that you have a higher chance of breeding, right? And I feel good when you're successful, right? I feel good when my brother gets laid, right? So I help him get laid.
That's a weird fetish, but okay.
No, not I as in
Yeah,
me specifically,
yeah.
but
Oh,
like,
yeah. When you're watching them,
yeah,
yeah, I got it.
yeah, but they're not really thinking about the getting laid. They're
Mm.
more thinking about just feeling good when their brother is being perceived as successful, right? And it's like it's when the in group is successful, it's good, and so
Yeah,
we embellish and emphasize.
regardless of what
Yeah.
the members of that in group are, as long as they're in that in group, whether via, well, see, in the case of a lot of animal species, it has to do with genetics, similarity, right?
Well, yeah, but even in animal species, it's not that.
Wait, what happened to you? Hold on.
Am I back?
There, you're
Hello, am I
back. You're
back?
back. Go for it.
Yeah, even within it's not always that precise. Like, so for instance, stepchildren are more likely to be abused,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that extends as nearly as far to babies that are adopted when they're babies. And so you can see in lower species, lower as in like less intelligent, I guess. If you take a baby from a different mother, right, and
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of push it in during the initial phases of like the feeding, right after birth, right, it might not notice that it's not related, right? Or sometimes weird stuff will happen, like uh, a leopard will be breastfeeding a baby deer or something, and then the leopard will just go and think of the deer as its kid forever, right? So it's not that precise. It's more about context, right? It's like slotting into the correct context.
Mm-hmm.
um, so if you combine all this stuff together with advanced human abstraction, it's easy for
You,
us to extend what is family out further and further and further and
further,
further.
okay. And before you go into all that, could you give some examples of what you would term those form of abstractions on the middle level, like a middle abstraction level that humans do commonly, among, say, like just average person, a more neurotypical person? What is it that they
Yeah.
generally head toward? What is that middle abstraction of, that extends further than,
Well,
say,
yeah,
most animals?
there's a range. So I mean, there's your tribe, which can include members who are from other tribes, right?
No.
That not all the members of your tribes are related to you. Most of them probably are, right? And a little
It
further,
depends
I
on the
mean,
size of the tribe as well.
yeah, in the modern day, political parties. A
Yeah.
lot of people go through life really connect to their political parties, even though they
Religious
don't.
groups as well.
Yeah, religious groups as well, right? Religion is
That's
a
probably
well.
an
That's the
even
thing about
older. Yeah.
that's the thing about language, is that it religious language extends the concept of family out across wide swaths of the population.
Yeah, but
So,
realistically, even if the language and the religion increases the in group and abstraction, the people involved in that religion don't necessarily live up to it or actually attempt to expanded that far most of the time. Like for
Well, depending on
example,
the individual.
yeah, I guess it comes down to the individual. But generally speaking, like somebody that's taught to extend their in group into other, say, nations or tribes or whatever, because of the the religious context of their belief system, doesn't necessarily do that, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that easily occurs within human beings to abstract out
Well,
their
yeah,
in
but
group.
that's different than how it has worked. So that's one thing where it's like the religion instills in you an abstraction across all instantiations of mankind, but that's not the most common religious effect.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
most common religious effect is extending the in group across everybody who thinks the way that you do, everyone who
Or
believes in,
believes in the
yeah,
same god
engages in the
slash
practice, right? Plays the games,
yeah,
right?
plays the
If you
same games,
participate,
same activities, has the same value systems
yeah,
in
and that's
association to
yeah.
that religion and maybe the
Okay,
dogma.
yeah, it's a system of heuristics for
Yeah,
expanding the family, the perception of family, essentially, right? So you go to a different place and someone is acting the way you act, and oh, you're like me, so we're your family, you're
yeah,
related.
your family,
Yeah.
you're this. Okay, it's interesting because like I feel like throughout human history, there's a lot of instances in which human beings attempt to abstract out the in group to be more inclusive to more and more aspects of humanity, but it doesn't necessarily, or groups, but that doesn't necessarily go that way. It doesn't necessarily work that way. In fact, the attempts, it seems, to include other people in the in group because of the requirement of having them become like you often leads to a lot of disaster, right?
Well, I mean, these systems of thought can become more restrictive over time
Yeah, but
in
I'm
terms
saying
of
like things
yeah.
like I'm talking things like what's it called? Oh, geez, what's the word I'm looking for now? When you're basically trying to force someone to believe what you believe.
You mean conversion?
Yeah, conversion is a
Forced,
form of
forced conversion.
forced in grouping, right? Isn't that
Well, I mean,
essentially
yeah,
what's occurring there when you're talking something like forced conversion or being told, okay, it's either you change your ways or you get the bullet? Like, isn't that the same thing as like basically saying join our in group within our parameters? If not, you remain in the out group and thus you are cast away.
yeah, I mean, yeah, essentially, there's, I mean, also like a more immediate, concrete way of talking about that is that um, if you're if you're lower in openness, which is to say that you can't abstract out of whatever framework you happen to be in for any length of time,
Hmm.
then it's easy to believe that that framework is the only framework, and that no that there could be no additions, no editing, no changes to it, right? And so if
Yeah,
you're in
yeah,
that state, then you're going to be really resistant to difference. You're going to be the opposite of a postmodernist. And then when you interact with people who engage in different practices, you'll just go, those practices are flawed, forever flawed. There couldn't possibly be anything that we could learn from them. And so you need to adapt to these better ways of doing things, or you're irredeemable.
yeah. Plantasia just said, and we talked about this before. Religion also provides explanations for things that are far too abstract for many to really think about or come up with explanations for themselves. Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about that before. How it's basically used as a fill-in or a slot-in for things that are just too abstract for the average person to actually want to deal with or put expend enough energy into, because they have too many other concerns or too many other things that they prioritize over those abstract concerns or issues. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, think of it like this, like, so if you have this part of your brain that occasionally activates into the abstract,
Mm-hmm.
and if what's there is a system of language that activates your in-group and your oxytocin and your serotonin, right? It's like going into the abstract for them is relating to a parent,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, then whenever you go there, it balances your mood, right? So
Yeah.
whenever your brain switches on, it's like, oh, it helps you. It actually helps you.
Yeah.
So that's advantageous.
Yeah. Because then what did you call it that? It's just mood balance, right?
Well,
Mood
yeah,
balancing. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, mood
The
balancing.
importance of a mood balancing and within a group as well, like as a whole. Um, okay, so good, good. I'm glad we got it because this is where things start getting weirder.
But yeah,
So,
the question is how does this relate to schizoid cognition? And
oh yeah, oh yeah.
yeah,
So
some of the go ahead.
oh yeah. So what we've established when we talked about this in previous streams with you. And by the way, I'm just telling everyone the A and B streams. You can look at the previous ones. I've had two others with Verb. Whenever I do these streams, they're going to be conversations that get deeply into theoretical and get really abstract and get really out there. And that's the point of these streams. For people that aren't into that kind of shit, this is probably not the stream for you. But if you like just going off into rabbit holes and shit, it's fun. It can be really fun because we'll go all over the place usually. Okay, so when we talk about you know, for the lack of a better word, I guess schizo or schizoid or whatever cognition, um, we're talking about basically living a type of like a conscious living experience that generally like the emphasis of thought is in the abstract, right? Or the higher levels of abstraction than like the average person or neurotypical person.
I want to clarify
Okay, yeah,
because
clarify. Yeah, I know.
when
Yeah,
you
yeah,
say abstraction, what most people think of is imagination or
yeah, yeah.
scientific thought or modeling, and that's
No,
not really what we're talking
that's
about.
not.
We're
Yeah,
not
that's
talking about
not.
intelligence, right?
Yeah, we're not talking
Um,
about intelligence at all.
we're talking about resolution,
Mhm.
which is different. Which is different. You can be very smart and abstract, or very stupid and abstract. It's not, and you can have
Yeah.
the ability to hold things in your mental sketch pad, complicated things, and those can be abstract things, or
Mm.
they can be concrete things, right? So you
Yeah.
can be abstract and very dumb and not be
Yeah.
able to,
But that's
and
a
not have
common
good working
issue.
memory.
That's a common issue among a lot of schizoids and people that are close to A2 is that, or just schizotypal people and things like that, is that we have this tendency oftentimes in order to kind of honestly just deal with the horrors that is this incompatible world for many of us. Um, we we will get the fact that we live in this kind of abstract world and confuse it for having a higher form of intelligence or
No, yeah, we're
cognition.
smarter than everybody else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So oftentimes, like you might not necessarily like. I mean, let's just say you got a half decent IQ, your brain's working right, you're good, you're a pretty decent thinker and everything. Just because you live in the world of abstraction because of how it functions, oftentimes you'll think, oh, I'm thinking about all this meta stuff. I'm going meta all the time. So that means I must be smarter. It's like no, no, that's not at all what it means.
Smarter in relationship to what? Because
Yeah,
it
exactly.
only makes sense to say smart in relationship to some goal and your ability to complete it. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it's meaningless.
correct.
So,
So I guess if your goals are all meta, I guess it would make you smarter.
well, then, but the problem is if your goals are meta enough, you never know if you're actually completing them.
Yeah, that's true. Then you just end up, like I said, you end up 20 to 30 years playing video games and thinking about all these cool meta things and never doing anything about them. All right.
God, I feel
So,
like I'm
so-
being personally attacked right now.
yeah, I know. Right, well, you might be, but that's okay because we don't mind
Okay,
attacks. According to DSM, we don't mind criticism or compliments. So,
we're indifference to praise and
yeah,
criticism.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. According to them, right, and how it
Anyway,
functions.
so let's go back to kin selection and
Yeah,
see
yeah,
if we can
yeah,
relate
yeah.
this to.
So let's get that and then start thinking about how kin selection and how this sort of in-group out-group dynamic applies to the type of cognition we've discussed that a lot of cluster A or whatever people deal with. These kind of this emphasis on the abstract, living within the realm of the meta all the time, and it's not like it's we choose to be this way. It's just something that happens. Like I don't make a conscious decision to think about the world and my experiences in this fashion. That's just my default. That's where my brain's at 90% of the time. And I have to actually make a conscious effort to push it back into kind of middle abstraction in order to function better. It's not because that's where I'm comfy. I'm comfy over here in the fucking weeds. But anyway, so how would you say this applies to things like kin selection?
Well, let's go over the basic assumptions that are currently sort of flying around.
Yeah, yeah.
The basic
Probably the easiest
idea
thing.
is that based on early childhood experiences, the in-group systems are dysfunctional or turned off, and so many schizoids think that they're or act. And I did this as well when I was younger. Um, we tend to think that we might be sociopaths,
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I'm
that's
not
all, dude. I've heard that many times from different. So
really,
it's on the
really common.
server or
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
channel. They'll think, "Oh, I thought I was a sociopath. Oh, I thought I didn't have any feelings." It's like and all this
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah,
anyway, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Well, first of all, sociopaths have lots of feelings.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I know. You know what
So
I mean?
first
Like
of all, yeah, no,
they
no, no,
think
yeah,
that's the same thing, but it's not. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't want to
It's
get.
wrong. It's wrong in so many different
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
But
Let's
I
not.
think the most
Yeah.
important way is that people whose in-group, out-group systems are defective, um, those systems themselves, that doesn't necessarily mean that they withdraw. That's the point, right? Like there's so many people you've probably encountered in life who are extremely abusive and objectifying, right? Who it's really difficult for them to form in groups, and yet they're surrounded by people. They're exploiting and abusing people, right? And they're
Yeah.
finding people that will put up with their exploitation and abuse, right? But their in group and out group systems, they're mostly in the out group, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you withdraw. And so that's just not a very good explanation of schizoid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, another part is that if you look at something like BPD or histrionic personality disorder, um, you can see that neglect, the same kind of neglect, especially emotional neglect, which people use to try to explain schizoid PD, seem to cause those as well. And so the question is, well, if if you can get BPD and histrionic, which are like almost opposite to schizoid in many ways, especially histrionic in the sense of lots of emotional expression, in group seeking, help seeking, aid seeking, affiliativeness. If neglect and abuse can cause both of these conditions, then there must be some other different factor, which is going, well, okay, abuse and neglect plus this equals schizoid. Abuse and neglect plus this equals BPD or histrionic, right?
Yeah.
So it's just not a very powerful explanation.
Oh, you're gone. Or
Am I back?
yeah, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, but you see what I'm trying to say here? It's just not a very powerful explanation. The defective in-group systems to
Yeah.
uh, because it doesn't predict the kind of reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Abuse is definitely a factor, and neglect is definitely a factor, but something else has to predict the kind of reaction. And so I think what we've been talking about here is the idea that a level of abstraction that you're predisposed to be at in
Mm-hmm.
part dictates how you're going to react to abuse.
Correct. That's it,
So
and that's why I want to bring this up right now because Plantasia put something in here in the chat. That said, it's because if the ways which you are surviving are less obvious due to complicated societies, your brain will be forced to use more symbolism, make looser associations. If you are forced to be more oppressed, you will have to survive in a more indirect, internally focused way. I think the development of certain disorders depends on the degree of inherent extroversion and introversion. Okay, so this is actually kind of a, I guess, sort of, I don't know, contentious is a weird issue, is the trying to figure out how much is chicken and egg when it comes to this sort of stuff. See, what oftentimes me and Bert were talking about is that we think that the abstraction based experience or cognition predates the impact that the neglect and the and abuse has on that cognition or that experience or those experiences. So like, it's not like it neglect itself or abuse itself is what causes you to adapt to a completely different default setting. Because I
let's use
used
some
to think that
examples.
when I early on I thought it was the abuse because I was reading literature and I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. It's the abuse and so, and then I started talking to more schizoids and a lot of them didn't necessarily undergo any major abuse, and a lot of them, mostly the neglect was there, but the way that neglect is explained was that a lot of times it's not intentional on the part of the parents. The parents were actively trying to neglect or making or failing to achieve. Well, they were failing to achieve needs that needed to be met, but not for conventional reasons, and it wasn't because of a lack of effort sometimes. Uh,
Yeah, they have to reference something else from the literature, which is that schizoid kids tend to withdraw as well. Like it's not just the parent doing it. It's
Hmm.
that the kid is almost, it's like the way to talk about it is like they're on the edge of falling out of the world, and they need like a lot of interaction to sort of bring them out, right? And if they have a lot of interaction, then they might not become schizoid, but they need more than a normative child would need.
Not
um,
what, and what's interesting is that like whether somebody is diagnosed schizoid, schizotypal, or paranoid or whatever, if they're diagnosed within that kind of cluster A group, one of the common themes is the withdrawal. It's the withdrawal. It's the disinterest in social
Also, the run up to the
convention.
schizophrenic episode, right?
The
Like
what?
as the run up to the schizophrenic
Oh
episode,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the
Is
initial phases are this like the same symptoms,
yeah, yeah.
on the outward symptoms of schizoid.
It's like a progressive sort of thing that seems to occur, and I think a lot of that progression into more positive symptoms oftentimes has to do with more trauma and more years of value. I mean, of needs not being met and isolation, things like that. I think that increases. There's probably a predisposition for which people that think this way start developing positive symptoms at what age and how strongly and how severely and such. I think that's all. A lot of that's predisposed as
Yeah,
well. I
but
don't think.
before we move on, let's quickly go over the arguments for the predating of the abstraction, rather than the abstraction is caused by the
Yeah, yeah.
abuse,
That's what I wanted
right?
to have you
Yeah.
get into a little bit.
One is what I talked about just earlier in terms of, well, what decides which adaptation you take to the neglect, right? So one adaptation might be your prefrontal cortex is super inhibited, but you're at a more normative range of abstraction. And in that case, and then you might have a feminine survival strategy, right? You might be very affiliative and relationship focused. And so then you're looking at each person and you see there's a little interaction as part of them, which is that maybe they're talking to someone else. And because your prefrontal cortex is so shrunk, essentially, you have super ADHD. You can't see the context of your interactions to have a quote unquote accurate judge of whether you should trust them or not,
Yeah.
right? Or whether the relationship is going to continue. And then you have an explosive reaction to that act of them interacting with someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then that's a possible adaptation to abuse and neglect. And that, so you might describe that as BPD, right? But so then, well, what happens if you keep all of those pieces except you abstract it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what does that mean? Well, you take that piece, which is the person and the interaction. Prefrontal cortex is just as closed in, but you abstract that piece out. So instead of it being an individual who you're interacting with, who's interacting with another person at this little normative range, right? Now it's a deity, or it's a celebrity who you're not interacting with
Yeah, it's a
immediately.
parasocial
Right.
slash erotomania type situation.
Right. And so then the
Yeah.
same kind of interaction is happening. It's just not with a real person, not
Yeah.
with a concrete instance,
And
right?
yeah, you're having a relationship with an idea, a concept, something far more vague. Uh, you're having a relationship with something that exists outside of what normal or normative society can provide you, generally speaking.
Right. And so what they would describe this as would be like at it in less severe cases, it would be something like a maladaptive daydream, or the schizoid excessive inner fantasy life, right? And it's on
Right.
a line to this more intense stuff, right? But that's sort of what we're talking about. And if you want to go in the opposite direction, then you might concretize more. And then instead of being focused on the interaction between your love interest and some other person, you might be concretizing, focusing on the specific behaviors of your love interest, right? So you might be getting anxious because they changed the way the table was set.
Yeah, but now
Right?
you're delving
Yeah.
into more like autistic territory, right?
Right, but that's the point. I'm just trying to illustrate that
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the
yeah.
it's a spectrum all the way up and down,
And
which
that
is
brings
something that we
up
know.
that
Yeah.
other point is that for those that haven't heard already or heard us talk about this, like I said, listen to the other A and B streams. You might find them interesting because we kind of talk about this. We have these ideas, and it's our own theories and concepts and ideas because there's not much literature. There's literature out there that kind of discusses the possibility of some of this stuff, and we're using some of those ideas in order to come up with more ideas that should probably be looked into a little further. And this is just kind of one of them, but it's that because I know you hate when I use that framing, but how would you phrase it? How is it similar to, say, autism? What is the common denominator here? Is it that it's
It yeah,
it's
okay.
a neurocognitive kind of
In
default sort of?
yeah,
Uh,
in the same way that um, autistic children are cognitively, genetically predisposed to be hyper concrete and to find their struggles in in hyper concreteness. Schizoid and cluster A people are genetically predisposed to this form of abstraction. So it's just another example of how this predates the
and
abuse.
this
And
is the
yeah,
theories that we're working under when we do these streams. Again, we there is no, like, I can't point to you any specific evidence that would prove it, unless there's probably,
what
like,
do you
well,
mean? There's
okay,
tons of
okay,
it.
yeah, okay. There's evidence that could prove it were it to be compiled, and then a proper I guess research was done, and then thus eventually could prove this theory that we're working under. But there isn't enough to say yes, this is definitively true, at least on an official level. So don't think that what we're saying is, like, authoritative truthiness or whatever you want to call it.
That's never how it works in these discussions anyway. Anywhere, nobody
Yeah.
has the authoritative. It's
No,
always
but you know what I'm
questions.
saying. I
Yeah,
don't want people.
and
We're not
we're
a
obviously not in
psychiatrists.
academia.
We're not in
Yeah,
academia. Well,
yeah.
I probably should have been. This is what I should have gone into, but not a stupid master's of history. I should have got it in fucking cognitive behavioral therapy and shit like that. That probably would be
Oh,
more useful. But anyway, okay. Plantasia also, in schizophrenics leading up to onset psychosis, they have more synaptic connections in the prefrontal cortex.
yeah, but
As
yeah.
far as concrete evidence goes, I guess there is a increase in synaptic connections there
Well,
than the
we
average
know we
person.
know that we well. There's also the whole pruning thing. Like
Yeah.
in schizophrenia, they have more pruning of the synapses, and in autism, they have less. And
Can you
uh,
explain that a little bit?
well, you can if you go look up autistic neurons and then go look up schizophrenic neurons. The autistic neurons have tons of overlapping, like tons of dendrites. They're like super complex, ridiculously over complex, and then the schizophrenic neurons are more elegantly shaped. And so that's just the point, is that there seems to be um, deep neurobiological
Reasons.
explanations for autism and schizophrenia. And then if we know that schizoid and schizotypal and paranoid PD are related to schizophrenia and it runs on a spectrum, then there's obviously a neurobiological component, a genetic
Yeah.
component as well. And
So
there's just
that's the
more evidence.
defining
Yeah.
feature that we're kind of trying to bring together there. It's the neurobiological component that isn't discussed pertaining to in relation to cognition and people with, that are schizotype or schizoid or whatever, that have this.
Well, I guess it's just like, look, if we're if as a society we're going into this space of thought called neurodiversity,
Yeah.
where we realize that people are predisposed to these different ways of being,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And we extend that to autism, and we even extend it to, in some cases, like different personality disorders, like BPD. Now, for me, um, that's a little more questionable for me, to be honest. Right? Why? Well, because, and this, I think this is the point. This is the
Ooh,
most
you're
important
gonna get
point.
controversial. Watch out.
This is, I'm not getting controversial. This is the most important. Okay, you're right. I am getting controversial. The most important point is that if the schizoid person um, has a healthy environment, in the same way that if the autistic person has a healthy environment, and that environment's going to be different than a normative environment, then there is no personality disorder. That's the argument, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a little different from BPD, because in BPD there really is a problem with the way that the person processes the world, right? If you're looking at only a little piece of a really complicated structure, whenever you're looking at a person, then you're going to be oscillating between these extreme emotional experiences, and you're going to be in distress, right?
Yeah.
That's a problem.
And the distress is what we're concerned with when it comes to something like a PD, right?
Right, and so then the way that you help a person with BPD first to provide them, of course, to provide them a healthy environment, but to allow um, their prefrontal cortexes to recover, so that they can process the whole elephant rather
Yeah,
than just the trunk or the right.
yeah.
So yeah, but then that's a little different with schizoid, and this is what we've sort of been observing in the server is that
Um,
when you tell a schizoid go out and socialize, right,
yeah,
and then they take your advice, it doesn't tend to work,
yeah. If
right?
anything, like you, like it'll shrink it again.
Yeah,
Stress will go up, and
even when the schizoid gets to a point in therapy where they're totally ready to get better, right? They're totally ready to make
well,
changes, right? And
or they've done
yeah,
significant strides in reducing the impact that their negative symptoms have on them,
right.
in some regard via therapy. Go ahead.
Or medication.
Or medication, yeah, especially medication is actually a really good one. Yeah, if you give a schizoid person or schizotypal person medication to reduce the effect of their negative symptoms, what's going to happen when they go out into the real world again and try to interact? Are they suddenly going to be able to do so and enjoy it?
No,
No, exactly.
generally not.
They're not,
They're
and
gonna
then that's going to increase their stress, which in turn is going to require more medication to manage the increase
well,
in
and
stress.
this is from schizotypal, but it's in the same cluster.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they blend over a lot.
No, yeah,
Is
that's the one thing that blends over very often is that they
when you
can't
expose
seem,
them, yeah,
yeah, when you
to a
expose them,
social environment,
yeah,
it makes them more anxious rather than less.
or
If you ever take a person who has social anxiety, right, like they
yeah,
have a phobia,
yeah,
and you expose them to social environments, over time they get less anxious. Cluster A gets more anxious the longer. Why, right?
yeah,
Right,
because it doesn't have to do with a because okay, when you're talking something like if you're talking simply just social anxiety, you're probably talking or say the social anxiety that, and I don't know enough, so this is just the thought of mine. The social anxiety that someone that's avoidant might have is still based on a very middle abstraction sort of thing. It's still based on this. It's still based on what is it? Status and in group, out group dynamics pertaining to like more concrete stuff. And so the concerns, those concerns can be alleviated over time, and then thus there's an improvement in their disposition when it comes to eventually being more and more able to socialize. But if you're talking,
rather than saying avoid, because avoidance is kind of a very
yeah,
abstract
yeah,
diagnosis,
yeah,
but contained within that are lots of little phobias,
yeah,
like
yes, social
different kinds
phobias, yeah,
different kinds of status anxiety phobias, where it's like, well, whenever I'm in a situation where I'm expected to lead, I get anxious, or whenever I'm in a position where people are leading me, I get anxious, or whenever these, and it can get a little bit, more concrete, or way more concrete, and it's like,
mm-hmm.
well, whenever a person says this particular sentence or this particular word, I get anxious because that was associated with something, or or when people who wear a certain kind of shirt, or people who
Yeah, it gets really it gets attached to a bunch of very specific phobias, but those phobias are still attached to very sort of cognitively normative concerns and value systems that are focused
correct.
on that middle
Yeah.
abstraction.
It's a little different than abstracting out the essence of what humanity is and rejecting it.
Yes. It's
It's a
not a
little,
little, it's not a little different. It's very different. It's
yeah,
entirely different in a lot of, and so I'm thinking, okay, so that's some of the negative stuff that comes with abstracting the out group because uh the way it would function is like, because what becomes the out group at that point for somebody that's cluster 8, right? What becomes, when it comes to kin selection, what becomes the out group now? What is because in the case of in the or the in group, because in the case of say the normative individual, their in group's generally going to be what? It's going to be like friends, family members, and things of that nature, people they respect and enjoy. Forces, yeah. So forces
like yeah,
and people associated to the much more concrete aspects of reality, right? Like resource distribution.
Well, no,
Uh,
I was talking about the abstractor when I said forces. I was
oh,
talking
okay,
about
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I see.
and then individuals as manifestations of those
Of
forces,
forces, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's how
yeah.
the. But that's not. I was talking the normative person.
Oh
The
yeah,
normative person would be what would be the emphasis? It would be things like resource management, safety, like physical safety. What else? What would you name? A couple more things, like things that would
yeah.
be associated to the in group
Specifically,
on that middle abstraction level.
well, okay, well, the mechanism, so beyond relatedness,
Yeah,
the
beyond
mechanism
related is yeah.
for increasing the empathy value so that somebody's in the in group
So it
is
expands
mode.
further.
Well, it's tangential usefulness in the sense that you have a goal structure,
Hmm.
and then the people who are instrumental in getting you where you want to get, right, who share your goal structure in some way, right?
Hmm.
Well, the more they do that, the more in the in group they are,
Yeah,
right? The more the values, the goals are shared, and the more you see meaningful progress coming out, seeming to be associated with their presence, the
yeah.
more. So, and then this is the point though, because if you are abstracted away from most normative goal structures, right? If you're the kind of person who is off in abstract land and you can just barely come down and feed yourself and clothe yourself, and it's like, and you live a very
Yeah, because you're
simple life.
floating in space
Yeah,
90% of the time.
you,
Yeah.
you look around, like you don't need to get your, you don't need to have a very complicated physical presence or concrete life in order to be satisfied. Like if I'm looking around my house right now, I barely have any furniture. I just don't need it. I don't. That's just because
Yeah, I
I
get that.
don't need
When I
to
was
be
younger,
here.
I used to keep my
Yeah,
washed my dried clothes like in the washer dryer or in a cardboard
yeah,
box next to me.
right,
Yeah, because I didn't
exactly.
care about it
Yeah.
folds or wrinkles or any of that stuff. Like,
No, yeah, it just
I was
wasn't
like, I don't
relevant. Yeah.
care.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's another good observation is that people tend to care about wrinkles, and that never made sense to me because I'm not interested in impressing anybody with my clothes.
Yeah, exactly. That's not the.
I'm not trying
It's
to.
funny.
I'm not
Like
trying to have
over
higher status.
time, for adaptive reasons, I've like taken up certain more normative middle abstraction concerns for the purposes of pragmatism, like and getting through the day uninhibited by those like the possibility that those concerns may come up for other people around me. So then I have to actually care. I have to teach myself to care about certain things, like wrinkles in my clothes, for example, as just an example, because I want to avoid the conflict or the issues that might come up pertain to others interacting with me and those wrinkles being there. Do you get what I'm saying? Because I want
Yeah,
to avoid.
yeah.
So in a effort to avoid such interactions, then I now have this concern about wrinkles, but it's on a
Well, but
completely different
here's the
playing
thing.
field.
That's, I mean, that's a similar thing that happens with normatives. It just happens earlier and faster,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
gets into their personality, and then of course they get stressed out when it doesn't work out, and then they criticize other people who don't do it.
yeah,
The difference is that it just you weren't predisposed to think that way, and so you didn't until you had to.
yeah, exactly. Which was much later in life, right? And okay, Plantation's saying some stuff I want to see here. If it feels like Cluster B is internalizing more of the environment which they perceive as fluid and constantly changing, whereas Cluster A is unable to trust an environment that seems inconsistent in its properties, so they don't form a connection. I see society as a bubble or safety buffer that allows people to avoid directly grappling with the existential terror of trying to survive pure natural selection. If you cannot connect to society, you build your own safety bubble and fill the lack of abstraction with your own thoughts and fantasies that is more internally located, therefore under your control.
I'm confused. I'm confused at what she means by abstraction, but essentially what I heard was uh, cluster B is in the world and
So,
schizoid is out of the world,
yeah,
right?
yeah, but they still have to construct a very elaborate inner world in order to feel safe.
Well, but
And
I think the point we're talking about here is that the construction of that inner world is in part a consequence of hyper abstraction. Why?
mhm,
Well, let's say you're in a let's say you're born into a family that's a little bit abusive or neglectful, right? So, and let's think about the different predispositions and what the child's brain or mind might be doing in response, right? One response is to look at what's happening from a sort of top-down, zoomed-out perspective. So you're looking at the sets of different interactions you've had, and you're comparing that to other family interactions, right? And then you might take parts of the interactions that you've had which were positive, and you might take those out and put them into a new system, right? A new abstract structure where it's all of the positives and none of the negatives. And then you live there instead of in the actual world. But that requires the top-down view in the first place, right?
Yeah, it requires that default setting.
It requires that setting of being able to look across the domain, because you couldn't compare. You just couldn't do it, right? Another response would be to be completely in it, to be consumed by it, right? To not be able to think outside of the box of this experience. Like, this is just what a relationship is. Mm-hmm. And now you have people who are in these sort of abusive relationships permanently, and they make the best out of a bad situation. But the mechanism which was powering the withdraw was the abstraction, and if you don't have that mechanism, then you can't withdraw. That's the point.
Yeah. I mean, and that differs from the reasons an autistic person would withdraw.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's sort of a different. It's the same thing, but it's happening in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of dodging over the normative in the direction of the abstract, you're dodging beneath the normative in the concrete. And so you have a kid who is mapping out all of the intricacies of the Pokemon or whatever other special interest it is, and just matter. doing that religiously, nothing but that, only caring about that, and you try to invite them to
that and things associated to that in similar concrete fashion. So, like, I mean, if your special interest is, I'm being absurd, but like, if your special interest is buckets, it's not just going to be buckets. It's also going to be hinges. It's also going to be metal, and the metal buckets are made up of, and everything that's and maybe it'll even get into welding, right? Because you want to make better, stronger buckets.
Like the texture of the wood and the texture of the metal.
And then if you want to get real crazy, maybe the types of things that buckets are meant to hold, and how you can create better buckets that can hold better, heavier, different substances. And then they have to learn about the substances that those buckets have to carry in order to know how to build a bucket that could carry that substance properly.
Well, I mean, I have both conditions, so I mean, I can relate to this in terms of trying to be creative. It's like every time I try to put something down, right, that word opens up a explosion of detail, and I have to know how the bucket was built and where the materials for the bucket came from and how those materials got there. And each word opens up that massive explosion of detail.
And a person like that is going to get just as lost in those things and kind of leave the world behind, just like the person abstracting would. Like, they're going to leave the world behind into the world of bucket intricacy, or whatever whatever the interest is.
Someone who is less autistic would not care about that. They would just throw out the word, there's a bucket there, and there's a river, and they're doing something with it. What are they doing with it? And then up for like, well, what are the patterns that people act out in all contexts?
How do people use buckets generally, and how does that have an impact on my life?
Even more so, it's like the concrete details of where all the materials came from.
Just stay on buckets. I like it.
It doesn't matter. What matters is how are the people relating to each other?
Yeah. What are the activities happening around the bucket? What are the activities that allow people to relate and work together, and how does that impact this whole in-group, out-group, kin selection stuff, and how does the bucket facilitate those things?
Well, yeah,
Uh,
and so that's sort of storytelling, which
yeah,
was, if you talk about evolutionary history and development, what were the cluster A's doing? Well, they were the storytellers. They were
yeah.
the right. That's sort of the point. And so the reason, when you're autistic and you're trying to write a story, it's really difficult
It's gonna read
because
like an instruction manual, right?
it's going to read like an instruction manual. It's going to read like a paper on each subject. Is going to have
Uh,
so much detail, and people reading it's like, well,
and
I
if there
don't
was
need to
people
know
in the
all of this.
story, it would be the human. How would it? I'm trying to think of. I mean, it's absurd, but trying to think of like how big, say, one set of actions that two humans do together would, how many pages it would be if the autistic person were to put in every detail they felt would suffice. Like
Well,
even
I
the
mean,
most.
I would just be going like my problem is that I try to do that, and then I always fall into like even the structures of their bodies,
Yeah, yeah, you get
right?
caught
And I
up
get
in
really
it.
wigged out about that. Like,
You're like, because like just saying he moved his arm to the left is not enough. It's like
no,
he's,
how much hydraulics are involved in
yeah, and the
the
arm movement, how the air current, how the air felt against his the
yeah.
follicles in his arm.
Yeah, like extremely descriptive is the
Yeah,
is the thing. It's like excessively descriptive.
to the point where it's restrictive to the normative individual to access in any
Well, I mean,
like
yeah. Well, the
practical
normative
capacity.
yeah, the normative individual would be like, "Why are you so focused on this part?
It must,
Why
or
this part?"
they might say it must mean something.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It
It
must.
must
It must be.
mean
Yeah,
something. There
yeah.
must be some undercurrent here. There must be some reason that they're focusing so much on these particular details when
Right.
there
They
isn't
must. It must connect to like yeah. There
to
must be a
something a
purpose.
little
Yeah.
more abstract, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's funny because just getting on that topic of the bucket, like how would a, like I'm trying to think how my brain would look at the bucket. So like I feel like I would see buckets and I don't even think about, like, when I think about a bucket, I don't really think about how is it actively, like, that's not my
Virgo,
concern.
the water bearer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I started thinking about like what is water bearing. I started
Yeah. What is
thinking,
water bearing?
I
Yeah. What
started
is
thinking
it?
about water itself. How does water, why does water need to be carried? How does water as a symbol affect human behavior and like civilization and how we build our social structures around this resource and how some of our pantheons have been developed. And
The first societies prospered because they were able to
how
create
was the
aqueducts
bucket
off
a
of river.
symbol? A bucket, the bucket itself, a symbol of human ingenuity.
In ancient Sumeria, they
It's just stupid shit. Like, but I like it. That's where my brain goes. Like, that's where I have fun, and that's where I'm comfortable. Like, I'm not. I don't want to hear. I like every time. Okay, there's a show that my wife watches. It's kind of anecdotal, but there's a show that my wife loves, right? And my wife, like, she's not all fucking cluster A like me, so she'll watch this How It's Made show, right? Have you ever seen that one? How It's Made?
I think autistic people love that show.
Yeah, yeah, but you know which one I'm talking about, right? Do
Yeah,
do
yeah,
do do do. It plays the song,
yeah,
and it just
yeah.
shows you step by step how like specific products or things are made, like from the gathering of the resources to make it. No, no, not even then. Actually, it doesn't go into that. It's usually like, okay, here are the resources needed, and these are the step. This is the step by step process in which it's done. And it's funny because I can imagine an autistic person watching that show and getting frustrated by the fact that there's a bunch of missing details. Especially if they in particular are aware of what those details are pertaining to the creation of that product that aren't being explained or discussed, like
Oh yeah.
weight ratios,
They
like
probably read the entire
like
Wikipedia.
no, but what I'm saying is that like it could say, oh, this is made up of this type of resource, and they'd be like, well, they're not being specific about what subset of type of that resource it needs to be, and what the density needs to be,
Right.
so that it's
Or you
proper,
say
and
that resource, but then that resource
yeah,
is
yeah.
composed of these other things.
Yeah, yeah, so on and so forth, right? But it's funny because my wife will watch How It's Made, and she's just sitting there in awe, really kind of enjoying it. Sometimes she'll be like doing something else. She's just listening, and she's just really enjoying how it is that this thing that is used for activities that she finds valuable was created, right? So if she's learning about how they make a, I don't know, a doorknob, right? She's not really concerned all that much with, the details of how a doorknob is made. It's the process of seeing the doorknob be made with all this like the complicated process, and then going, wow, that's the thing I use every day to go in and out of my home. That's the part that's interesting, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and to somebody that's autistic watching it, it'll probably be like, no, that's not interesting at all. What's interesting is how it's made. Like,
Yeah.
that's the title of the show. It's how it's made. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
how it's used. So, and then I think, but I'm trying to, I guess, explain my experience when I watch something like How It's Made. I'm watching How It's Made, and I am looking at the doorknobs being made. Well, I'm bored usually. Like, I'm just not interested at all on how doorknobs are made. But occasionally, there's times in the How It's Made in which, like, they'll mention something that's a little more meta about doorknobs, and, like, say doorknob shape or doorknob, or they might say, they'll throw in a little bit of history, in the sense that they'll be like, oh, the reason it's shaped this way historically is because, it functions better under these conditions that were prevalent in this time period, and it's kind of like a vestigial thing that still exists. And so then it makes me start thinking about, like, oh, how many objects and how many things that we use every day have, like, aspects of them that are vestigial, right? Because of a time period in which it was specific that they were created a certain way, but because it doesn't have a negative impact on us now, it's remained as such. And so it just became tradition, or it became just what the shape that, like, that people became used to, like, or there might be other shapes that could be probably more ergonomic or whatever, but we
Do you
don't
know what I
choose
think
them.
about?
Yeah,
I think about doorknobs.
yeah, yeah.
I think about, like, um
Oh my god! Start thinking about doors themselves and what the doorknob is. And
no, no, I think
no,
no,
because I can get into that too. But anyway, go
no,
ahead.
I think about, like, oh God, I think about different sets of activities in an abstraction spread as bubbles with doors connecting them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think of schizoid people as just going through the doors one after another, one after another, one after another, like just rushing through the doors and spending very little time in any one of those rooms.
Yeah,
So
like the action of opening and going through the door is
it's like it's so abstract. It's like it's symbolic of entering a new phase of being, right? It's like and and it's not even specific. It's not like a specific one. Like, okay, so I'm going from politics and now I'm a scientist. Or like, no, it's not even filled with detail,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just doors to different
When things get real
universes.
bananas, because
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, I'm not saying, look, I'm not trying to say when we talk about this. I don't think Burb's trying to say that either. Oftentimes we kind of go into the slightly the extremes, right? So it gets a little absurd, but that's not like you're always in those extremes all the time. If you are, then chances are that's when low functioning starts happening, right?
hey, I'm
Uh,
low functioning.
yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is that usually people, when they're a little more high functioning, they even if you're schizoid or schizotype or whatever, or you're autistic, somebody that's high functioning, I think a lot of the times it's because they can travel more seamlessly into the middle abstract when necessary, even if it
Yeah,
requires a little more effort or more conscious effort or decision making on the part. And it's not, it doesn't come as intuitively to the person. They could still do it more, and because they can do it, they can navigate the structures of normative society a lot easier. Somebody that can't do it, obviously, that's when they start becoming way more low functioning. And on top of that, you add in, like, intelligence and learning disabilities and so on and so forth, and then it gets more complicated and more difficult and so on. Yeah, it continues down that line. That's how I generally see it. So somebody that's like I can imagine someone that's very schizotypal, that is like not maybe like mid to low functioning, might be so because their intelligence is high enough to navigate certain things. But say that same person was low intelligence, they probably would be even less functional in their
and
ability to differentiate things. or be able to even think of like the practical reasons for why they have to put as much effort or energy into the perceiving middle abstraction like stuff.
Well, I
Like,
mean, I think the environmental factor comes in the sense that um, if if you think about it, like there's these two domains which are possible trajectories for your mind,
yeah,
right? There's the normative range and there's the cluster A range, and you have both of those. Then, just like if there's two rooms or two fields, right, that are out in front of you with a gate in between, and you look into one field and there's a big, scary, evil clown, and let's say you're afraid of clowns,
yeah.
and in the other field there's an ice cream truck, right? Which field are you going to go into? Okay. So, um, if you're a cluster A kid and you suffer some abuse or neglect, then most likely the field of the abstract is going to be a lot more appealing. And so you're going to go there because it's there. But I guess the genetic argument is that the field isn't there for everyone. And if
No,
the
yeah,
field is there, no matter how bad the left field is, it's the only field you have. So it's the only field you can be in. And so you make it work. You go negotiate with the scary clown.
the scary clowns.
The
Go hang out
scary
with all the
evil clown.
scary clowns.
Yeah,
Oh
you
man.
negotiate. You have no
Yeah,
choice.
yeah. You have
Um,
to kind of go talk to the
yeah,
psychopathic clowns.
yeah. So but as the field on the left fills up with psychopathic clowns, you spend more and more time in the field with the ice cream truck. But the problem is that in the field with the scary clowns
So
also is where all of your water and all of your healthy food is,
yeah,
and
yeah.
all of
The
and
things that keeps your body alive.
things that keep your body alive. And so you
Yeah,
just sort of wither away in the right field
yeah,
because you don't ever want to go into the left one. And then this is this
yeah.
schizoid
It's
withering.
almost like you have like a shelter, like that internal world, your shelter. But if you stay in that shelter, you're eventually gonna run out of food and water.
Right.
And you have to go out into the scary clown field or the normative world and the middle abstract world in order to get the things that your body needs. Because unfortunately for you, the body is very much concrete and there isn't much you can do about it. Like, you know.
Another part of cluster A and schizophrenia is that along with this different form of cognition, there's also some evidence that the sensory profile is mirrored in that um, cluster A people, schizophrenic people, are less physically sensitive. Like their their sense of touch is less sensitive, and their sense of smell is less sensitive, and they're more resistant to pain. They actually don't feel
Wait, you're
as
saying
much.
cluster A people are more resistant to pain?
Yes,
There's
that's
there I haven't read that research. There's
the, I
research on that?
yeah. If you look at the schizophrenia studies,
Oh
there's like
wow, that's
there's lots of
fascinating.
studies.
I mean, that
There's
makes
lots
sense. I wonder if there's more cluster A people that are into BDSM.
quite possible.
I feel like it would be. It's like I want to feel something. It's like
Yeah, well, yeah. But then another back to what we were just talking about. As the physical discomfort of not meeting your needs in the left field uh, scale up, if you're less physically sensitive, you're not going to care as much. And so you see cluster A people, a lot of homeless people, right, who are just sort of wandering around, like, and you look, well, aren't you physically miserable,
yeah, they're
right?
sickly, they're hungry,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
they're but they're
yeah.
but they're they're
They're
physically
barely.
miserable, but they might
Yeah,
not necessarily be as emotionally miserable as they would be were they less sickly, but forced to interact with normative environments on a more consistent basis.
it's
Like
like
it's kind of interesting because then it makes me think about a lot of because there's always a discussion. It's kind of like a difficult discussion that there is a lot of homeless people out there that due to their mental whatever, they even if they're offered food, money, water, things of that nature, if it requires them to have to interact with normative environments more, they rather not.
right.
So like they like
Yeah,
it's like oh here's a homeless shelter. This place has food, water, things you need, a warm bed, whatever, right? And then it's like, okay, but what else? What do you need from me? Oh, we have to have these discussions where you sit with groups of people and talk about how you're doing and how you're experiencing things and blah 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 blah. And so because of that, a lot of the times they're just like, fuck that, I'd rather just be out here. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I'll just if you want to give me food, I'll take it to where I'm gonna be, but I don't want to live, I don't want to be in there and have to be restricted by your rules and your.
Well, there's also, I mean, there's also the factor of that there's lots of people who are dangerous in
Oh yeah, of
those
course. Yeah, there
areas,
could
right?
be.
Yeah.
So maybe yeah, there might be some paranoia issues regarding that. They're like, I don't want to sleep there. Somebody's gonna murder me in my sleep, or someone's gonna
Yeah, I
steal
mean,
my
someone's gonna steal my
things.
shoes, or like, I mean, but that's how that happens. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And that's a risk that they're not willing to take
Well, yeah,
because.
well, because there's lots of different kinds of homeless people, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
cluster A homeless people, and then there's like cluster B homeless people, and the cluster B homeless people fuck with the cluster A homeless people.
Oh, you're talking about like an ASPD homeless person?
Yeah, like narc homeless people who just steal your shit, and it's like, well, what the fuck?
Oh man, that's not good. And that's
No,
a
like, well,
really
yeah,
insecure homeless person if they're a narc homeless person. I mean, their goal is going to be to increase their status as quickly as possible and remove themselves from the homeless status to begin with.
well, not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily. No, that's true. There could probably be an argument right there. Okay, man, we went off. I told you guys this is what happens. We start going off into a fucking direction. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. Let's fucking draw this back a little bit. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit, and Burb, you can go ahead and fill in some details because I tend to be the more anecdotal guy of two of us.
Sorry,
So what happened?
uh,
Are you okay? Are you
I
here?
got disconnected, but I'm back.
Are you back? Okay,
Yeah, I'm
I
fine. I'm
tend to be
fine.
the
I was just
more
saying,
like
yeah,
I tend to
yeah.
be the more anecdotal like person between the two of us. Like like just kind of and you can give me a lot of detail. So this is kind of what I want to bring up. I want to talk about my personal experience with how I perceive in-group stuff. Okay, like me
Okay.
as a schizoid. Probably, if I express my inwardness more, would be diagnosed schizotypal type sort of individual. So, um, okay, so this is how I perceive my in-group, right? And I want to start with how, say, a doctor, right? I want to talk about that. That's more normative, right? But a doctor would extend the range of their in-group based on the idea of helping others in the medical field, like so patients, right? So then patients become like an extension of that in-group that goes for much further outside the realm of immediate family, a locale, and things like that. Like
Not
those.
not 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 necessarily. Not
Well,
necessarily.
yeah, because they become attached to the
Doctoring is
concept.
a
Well,
job.
yeah, I get it, I get it. But what I'm saying is that a lot of doctors, not all doctors, you're right. There are
Okay,
doctors
yeah,
out
sure.
there that become attached to the more abstract concept of helping others and
True.
mitigating suffering, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Physical, medical suffering or whatever, right? Okay. So
Yeah.
that usually that level of abstraction is generally speaking probably the most the further the most further it kind of goes for a lot of people, right? A lot of normative individuals. That's probably the biggest in-group abstraction that it usually goes. It'll be like a specific concept that they kind of attach their more middle abstract stuff to that then extends out their in-group a little bit further, right? Not a little bit further, but significantly further outside of just their
Hmm.
immediate vicinity or whatever, or family
Well, I
members
mean,
and whatever.
helping others is just an abstraction for those activities that they do.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
for
like
the activities that they do.
these are the activities that compose being a doctor,
Okay, yeah.
and then helping others is an abstraction for that.
Yeah. Okay. So, like for example, I'm discovering stuff about myself and my in-group stuff over the last year. Since it's almost been like a year since I've been doing this shit whatever, just doing this shit in general. And and I'm discovering, I like helping people, right? But the way I define helping people, the way that I'm emotionally attached to the idea of helping people, is very, very abstract. To where if I didn't kind of pull it back a little bit, and come to terms with the fact that I have to do concrete things in order to achieve my more meta goal, I wouldn't achieve even a semblance of what I've achieved thus far trying to help people, right? And what I'm trying to say is like, okay, so when I help people that are on my server, or if this conversation or the support streams that I do, by the way, I do a once a week or so. I try to do it once a week, like hour and a half, 2 hour support stream that you guys can get on, listen to, throw in stuff in the chat, ask questions. If you're a garden hermit or a patron, you can actually jump on and talk to me during that stream, talk about whatever you're going through, and then I delete that stream. So I get rid of it. I delete it. I don't even have it archived. I completely get rid of it. Right? I set it up as unlisted and I delete it. So it's just like a 2 hour ghost stream, and that's there set up to make a lot of schizoids and stuff feel comfortable with the fact that they're on a stream. That's, and it's not gonna. There's gonna be a record of it. You know, even if you're anonymous. I know it's like this other level. I understand that. Anyway, so that was just a shill for that. But when I perceive the people I'm helping, like, I don't really see. It sounds gross, because I don't know, but I don't really care. Are you okay, Burb? Because you sound like you're fucking getting murdered.
I'm okay.
All right, you keep shifting around, it's driving me nuts. Okay,
Right.
okay. So I see like the concept itself of lowering the harm that is being inflicted upon people in a the word I like to use, in a unnecessary fashion, a fashion that could be avoided, that is very specific to my own experience of being alive. So seeing other people or seeing others experience the difficulties that come with living in a world that's so cognitively incompatible or value system incompatible to them because of that cognition is very, very difficult for me. It makes me very sad and it makes me very uncomfortable. And I want to remedy that, right? I want to do what I can to help that. So when I see people being helped, it's not that those specific individuals are being helped that I am including in my like I don't know how to explain. It's not that those specific individuals are being helped that I'm interacting with directly. It's just, even if there's individuals that are being helped that I never get to talk to, that I never meet once, that I don't even know exist, like on a more middle abstraction level, because I know they exist on a conceptual level. That's what's more important to me. If that is what I'm helping, I don't care about, well, I don't want to say I don't care about, but it's not of my primary motivation is helping, is the concept of mitigating the suffering of people that suffer similarly to myself under conditions that are unnecessary in my perspective.
Are you ready for me to explain what
Okay,
you're trying to say?
yeah, hold on one sec.
I hear his wife in the background. Hope she's not mad.
All right, hello. Okay,
Okay.
so I got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
So let's you go ahead and explain to me how my in group functions in more detailed fashion.
So I think what's important here is to try to be a little bit more metacognitive about what we're doing right now and what people who are thinking like this are doing in comparison to others. So they say that psychoanalysis is a domain of schizoids. That's a quote that I've heard. Um, and well, essentially what's happening is you're thinking about abstract categories of kinds of people. And you're thinking about abstract categories of kinds of people which are similar to you. And they're not similar to you in the same ways that we were talking about earlier with the concrete behaviors themselves. It's like, well, I pray at this time of day to this particular God and read this particular book and these particular words, right? It's more like how I relate to the category of the religion that I happen to have, which right, it's actually that abstract because there are ways that schizoids interact with religious systems which are distinct from the way that normatives interact with religious systems, and all of this is so far above the specific concrete elements, but that's the level that you're perceiving at. And so essentially what you're saying is that you see these categories, and you do, and I do, and that's what we're talking about, right? And so here's a anecdote from the way I process the world. If I was more focused on um, solving my own individual problems, right, I would probably be acting very differently, concretely. Instead, most of my time is spent researching, trying to relate to these abstract categories and transcribe that into some form of communication, be it art, literature, or these conversations, right? So we're really speaking over our own cognition here. With it's like we're sort of in a bubble, and we don't really see how that bubble is different sometimes. You see what I'm getting at?
Oh, hold on. Yeah, I get what you're getting at, and that's kind of what I'm trying to explain. Is that is if it, it's a it's just a complete it's a value system that's very similar to it feels. Let's just say it's gonna feel emotionally similar to how somebody on a different level or with a different cognition would be experiencing. The emotion is not more deep or more important or more this or more that. It's probably just as impactful, but it's just on a completely different
It's
layer.
just different.
It's
It's
just
just different.
different. And that's what's interesting. So like when people thank me, like say somebody thanks me for the channel or thanks me for the service, whatever. Whenever I get a thank you, it's more like my response is generally like, "Oh, I get happy that that's just one that it's that I'm being shown evidence that this is working." Like it's not really so much like that specific person said I made them feel better. You get me? So seeing the evidence that my efforts are actually having an impact on the nature of that specific type of suffering, then that is what causes me to be elated to a degree. And what's funny is that it's the same probably emotional range that a normative individual would feel on a more middle abstraction sense of somebody saying that they specifically were made to feel better by that person, right? Would you say so?
I mean,
I mean, it's
I read
the
that this one
feeling, the
also,
amount of feeling
yeah.
that is occurring, like the connectivity that's occurring, because
Well,
I can connect to a
that I
concept a
mean, it's
lot better than
hard.
a person.
Well, yeah, it's hard because the concepts are a lot more difficult to work with, right?
Yeah,
Like
no, yeah, of
feeling
course.
bad about the category of all schizoids is a
Yeah, yeah.
lot more difficult to solve than the category of you as a
Yeah,
schizoid.
yeah,
Like
no,
that.
no, no, of course, and that's what I mean. The category of all roller coaster people, but not even. It goes further. It's the category of a lack of understanding when it comes to things like metacognition and things of that nature. That is like it gets really
Mm-hmm.
complicated, and it gets even more and
The,
more
the the the
insurmountable, right?
the category, yeah,
Y-
the category of having an intrinsic difference in cognition
and the
that
difficulties and suffering
you
that
didn't
causes
choose,
between human beings and
and being in a
yeah.
world of people who who are unlike you in some way that you don't know about, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it gets really crazy.
the the,
But
the, the yeah.
No,
The
yeah,
failures of communication,
yeah, the failures of communication as
the
a whole,
outgrouping.
and how.
These are the things that bum you
Yeah.
out.
But
And
that's what
when
I mean.
you observe success, you observe it in these terms as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
success is observable in
Yeah.
those terms, but also I have to become more realistic about my goals, right? So the way I see it is, if I like I have to accept that I'm not going to be able to fix this problem within my lifetime. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen within 10 lifetimes, right? So what my goal is, my medical, is to have some kind of impact on it, that I can say, or I can see myself, I can perceive and feel that an impact was done, regardless of how a slow or small of an impact it was. It inspires others to make more impacts. That right there is the meta goal that I would be achieving for my lifetime. You get me? And that would be a substantial thing for me, because like a lot of the times we'll have these like very abstract goals, but then you really have to look at the fact that the physical reality does not live in the abstract. Like it is very much concrete. Physical reality and experiences are very much concrete, and unfortunately your cognition isn't gonna is doesn't like your cognition and your environment don't share each other very well sometimes. And so coming to terms with that, and then realizing I have to focus on some middle abstract stuff in order, and I have to put in those efforts in order to achieve my more abstract goals, is a difficult thing. But once you do that, you can start doing some really heavy lifting.
Well,
Um,
you have to, I mean, a way to put this simply is that when, if you go back to the two fields analogy,
well, yeah.
when the
Keep it
cluster A
concise, because
person,
I gotta go.
yeah, enters into the left field, um, it's going to be for an important reason, right? It's going to be
Yeah.
something, it's actually going to be something simple and important, right? It's not going to be something trivial for the most part. But the only question is getting there and staying there, which is not easy if there's a bunch
And
of
it's
evil
kind of
clowns.
hilarious. It's kind of hilarious really quickly. Yeah, I get it. But what's really funny is that the effort required for a cluster A individual, or whatever you want to call them, to enter the normative world in order to achieve their meta goals, right? It's it's kind of interesting to think that there's a lot of that it's the same amount of difficulty or strain. Not the same amount. It's a different kind of experience, but it's similar to the amount of strain and difficulty that is required of a normative individual to enter the abstract realm in order to achieve some other goal. Like, say somebody, you know how, like, say a priest or somebody that's into like some kind of abstract concepts, and they dedicate their life to them and the study of them, and they're but they're normative otherwise. Those people will have to
Yeah.
put in an extreme amount of effort and conscious effort and energy in order to stay within those abstract zones. And oftentimes, those abstract zones take a toll on their lives, because obsession or not obsession, but focusing too much on those start having a negative impact on middle abstraction stuff in their lives that, say, a schizotypal person wouldn't care about, but they still do care about because they're still normative. So I just find that really interesting, that they get, once they start going too far into the, they start seeing their lives degrade, but they actually care. Unlike the homeless guy that doesn't care that his social life is degraded, or that he doesn't have this or that. Um, so I just find that interesting. All right, I gotta go. Thank you, Bert, for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. If you like these conversations, please follow me on here, subscribe to me, hit that stupid bell or whatever, because I started posting stuff to announce streams, so that's useful. And also, if these conversations with Burb, or the support streams, or the server, or whatever the fuck you're interacting with that I'm trying to kind of help keep together along with the help of other people, please support me on Patreon. And if you don't like Patreon, PayPal, or Bitcoin, or whatever the fuck, I usually have those links posted somewhere in my About Me or underneath the videos and stuff. All right. Thank you very much, and have you guys whatever fucking day you're gonna have.